Welcome to Leatherbrain, the podcast for fantasy football. Now, introducing your host, Hunter Slapdog Amoruso, and Matthew Scotty Holtmeyer.
We're back, baby.
We're back. Season 2.
Season 2. Well, you know, I was thinking about this because we have a lot of up-and-coming things for all the brainiacs out there, and I don't want to delve too far into details, but we've got a lot in the works for a lot of different things. I don't know if we necessarily label ourselves as Season 2 or not, but this is technically, I would say, Season 2. Like, we took a week off, a week and a half-ish, give or take. We're refreshed. I'm going to tell you right now, Yeti, I missed the hell out of you. I missed you.
Yeah, man, I missed your beautiful face.
I missed you so much. I missed your voice, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. There are things that we have missed because we were on vacation. And when I say missed, we knew about it, but we didn't get the opportunity to talk to all the brainiacs and let them get caught up on some of the things that are happening. There's a lot of different things happening or have happened in this short amount of time, but we figured this would be the time for us to take a break because we're right before free agency starts. This is like we're before the draft, of course, it was still a little ways away. And then you have the combine, which is coming up. So we're like, this is the time. We need a break. We need a breather. That's what we did. And now we're back.
We went to our little darkness retreats. We got energized. We got stronger. We got faster. We got
much
meatier.
ayahuasca.
Yeah.
It was insane. And it was good. I'm glad we did it. But we're back now, and we have a lot to talk about today. So we're going to get our brainiacs caught up on all of the NFL news that we have missed and some of the implications with that. And then, Yeti, I love this topic today that we're going to be talking about, and I think a lot of our brainiac community will enjoy this as well. We're going to be talking about quarterbacks, and this is a really, really big topic of conversation, or it's about to be, because as I mentioned just a moment ago, the free agency is about to start. There are a lot of free agent quarterbacks and big name free agent quarterbacks. Some of them not as much. But there's a lot of NFL teams that are currently looking for quarterbacks in this upcoming free agency as well as the draft. So we're going to talk about it all today. We're going to deep dive into that. And then we're going to talk about the implications with some of these players for fantasy football and them finding new homes. So are you ready, Yeti? Are you ready to get down to some business, brother?
I'm ready, baby.
Son of a gun.
Let's get down to business.
God, I miss that sound.
Let's get.
I almost did it again. Okay, so the first piece of news here. Yeti, you're a Raiders fan, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Derek Carr, he's left the garage for good. He is no longer a Raiders. There was a little bit of drama involved here, and honestly, I'm not wearing a hat, but if I was, I would tip my hat to Derek Carr because he was kind of shopping himself around. He was looking around. He's been with the Saints. I believe now it's the Panthers. He's visiting with. So he's visiting all these NFL teams. But he basically gave the middle finger to the Raiders on the way out. And in the way that he did this was he told them that he forced himself out in a way in which they could not receive any sort of compensation for Derek Carr, via future trade picks or any financial compensation. He said, I'm not going to accept any place that you try and send me to, so you have to cut me. And that's what they did. So that way, anywhere that Derek Carr goes, they don't have to spend any additional capital to get him. What are your thoughts as a Raiders fan?
Yeah, we've talked about this a few different times on the podcast now about Derek Carr leaving, but in regards to how he exited the Raiders, I feel like the front office, they really fucked him, man. He was obviously a huge focal point of the Raiders organization for the past 5-6 years. And the way that they kind of handled his exit was really fucked up. Like he didn't get a chance to finish out his season. And I feel like he should have at least been able to do that. There's 3 or 4 games left, I think, before they benched him. Like the least they could have done is let him play out, because not only does that look fucked up, but that shows other teams that, we're going to get rid of this guy. And they basically lost all their leverage at that point because they're saying, all right, we're done with Derek Carr. He's just going to ride the bench the rest of the season. Then we're going to cut him. So I kind of like what Derek Carr did. Like like you said, it fucks the organization because they don't get draft picks, but they did it to themselves. And the Raiders front office has been mediocre for the past 20 years, as I've been a fan since I was born, so 26 years, but the front office has always been an issue, and it continues on with Derek Carr, unfortunately. I wish him all the best, and it kind of looks like, he has three main spots. You kind of alluded to it with the Jets, the Panthers, and the Saints now. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands.
Yeah, and we'll touch more on that a little bit here in the meat and potatoes of our episode, so to speak, where we really delve into the quarterback situation. But the next piece of news here is we're going to talk about coaches for a little bit. We missed a lot of the news for the coaches, so we'll start out with John Gannon. Eagles defensive coordinator was hired as the Cardinals head coach.
Oof. What do you think, Slaps?
I'm pretty sad. I'm going to be honest with you. I was pretty pissed off when I saw that. Here's my thing. Here's my argument. That guy is a fucking goon. He is, and I almost got the clip to put in here for all of the Brainiacs, and unfortunately I didn't, and I should have. His introduction to the team was one of the cheesiest freaking things I have ever seen in my entire life. He's walking up to players going boom, pow, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You're a head coach, dude. I didn't think you know what? I after having Cliff Kingsbury as a coach, at the end of it, I wish him the best. But in the middle of having Cliff as a coach, I wanted him out. And I was like, there's no way you get any worse than Cliff. I'm having really bad thoughts right now, Yeti. I'm in a dark place. The guy is Michael Scott. That's what he is. He's he does not fit the mold for what I'm looking for. I am very skeptical. The Eagles defense was good for a lot of the year, but they blew it on the biggest stage imaginable. I'm curious to know how much of that was because of the talent that they had, the Eagles added as a defensive unit, versus how much John Gannon actually was a defensive genius, so to speak, because they got scored on the same play twice in the Super Bowl. All they did was you hit that right trigger for those that play Madden, and you reverse the play and you do the same damn thing. And that's what happened. And he got beat again. So, I'm not impressed with him. I'm currently in a dark place, and we're going to have to see what happens in the future. I don't have a choice. I am not the Michael Bidwell, the owner of the Cardinals, but if I was, I would not have hired him. I would have rather had Eric Bieniemy, who we'll touch on here in just a moment. I would have rather us picked up Eric Bieniemy and failed miserably. That's what I would have rather had happen than have John Gannon as a coach. So
yeah,
I didn't get that option. I didn't get the option. Eric Bieniemy, though, he has taken a new role. He is no longer with the Kansas City Chiefs. For those that do not know who Eric Bieniemy is, he was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he has taken what many are surprised is somewhat of a lateral move. He's the offensive coordinator for the Commanders now instead of the Chiefs. So I have my thoughts, but I want to hear yours first, Yeti.
This was interesting because he's been with Kansas City for the past few years now, since Patrick Mahomes has been at the helm for Kansas City. And many in the industry feel like Eric should have gotten a head coaching job. And I feel the same way. Why would you take a lateral move with Washington when you're with the Super Bowl winning team and you have a superstar quarterback in Patrick Mahomes? But I think there's a lot of questions around him too, because anybody with a brain knows that the offense in Kansas City is run by Mr. Big Red, Andy Reid. So how much of a role does Eric Bieniemy really have in that offense? Where is his role? Is he basically just an assistant to Andy Reid, or is he the one calling the shots? And I think this is the time for him to actually prove that I can run an offense effectively. And while Washington isn't going to be doing him any favors at the quarterback position, I think this is a chance for him to be like, yeah, it wasn't just Andy Reid. It wasn't just Mahomes. I am my own coach and I can do this. And I also think Ron Rivera could be one of those candidates for the hot seat this year if they get off to a slow start. Therefore, Bieniemy could be that assistant head coach, that interim head coach where when Ron Rivera gets let go, or if they get to that hot seat position. But I hope he does well in Washington, and I'm glad he's out of the AFC West.
I there's a lot of speculation that he doesn't interview well. There's some are saying it's a race thing. I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I will just bring it up because there is some speculation for that as well. But a lot of people are saying he doesn't interview well. And then there is also a lot of people that are saying that Andy Reid has carried him as far as he has. I think this is going to be a really big testament to his ability, because he's walking into what I would say is somewhat of an unfavorable situation, given the fact that you have one of the best quarterbacks of all time that you have been coaching for the last couple of years. And now you're going to a place where they don't even have a quarterback. And once again, we'll talk about that in the meat and potatoes side of things, but this is going to be really big for him. This is either a shit or get off the pot moment for him, as far as, is he really who, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this that is fair to the Chiefs, because we all know Andy Reid is great. I have a lot of respect for Coach Reid and what he has done. I love the guy. But I think this is going to be a sign, how much did Bieniemy contribute to that offense? And so this is going to be really interesting to see in this offseason. Another coaching change. We had Shane Steichen. I probably butchered that. He was the Eagles offensive coordinator. He was hired as the Colts' new head coach to replace Frank Reich after he was let go in the middle of last year. I don't really know a whole lot about him. I'm going to be completely honest, but I will say this, Yeti. He looks like a mouth breather. If you've ever looked at him, he looks like he's constantly breathing out of his mouth. So that was my first impression of Shane Steichen.
Yeah, so what does that tell you about him?
Yeah, well, I think that says a lot. He's
going to be a problem, isn't he?
He's going to be a big problem, and not in the way that I think Colts fans want. I'm not a Colts fan. I'm very indifferent to this entire situation. A small part of me, like just a small part of me, really was hoping Jeff Saturday got that job.
Me too.
I was just like, dude, if Jeff Saturday gets a shot, that would be so awesome. He was interviewing for it. He got called in for, I believe, a second interview. And I was like, is this about to happen right now? So I was kind of
just wanted chaos to start, man. That's all I wanted with Jeff Saturday.
I was like, I don't give a shit about this organization.
Yeah.
Just pure chaos. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So he didn't. And they hired a mouth breather.
I think, God, I don't know how to say his last name either. Steichen. That's just a shot in the dark. But I think he's kind of in a similar situation to Bieniemy, because Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, he's the one calling the shots for that offense. So it's like, how much of a role does Steichen really have? Obviously, with the Eagles offense, we saw that they are kind of a run first type of offense, which is great for Jonathan Taylor going forward. And I mean, his role obviously won't be changing a whole lot. It's just a matter of what are they going to do at the quarterback position, which we'll touch on in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Other news: Ravens, they hired a new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. He was the, I believe, the head coach, right, for the University of Georgia.
Offensive coordinator.
He was their OC. Yep. Okay. I'm interested to see this, because Georgia is pretty notorious for being kind of a run-heavy team, and is that going to transition into this Ravens offense, who already are kind of they want to run the ball. They've struggled to stay healthy at the running back position. Obviously, they have Lamar Jackson, or may not. We'll touch on that as well. But Lamar Jackson is a prototypical running quarterback. So that was an interesting hire to me. And I'm interested to see how they try and reshape this offense that is missing quite a few pieces.
Yeah, and Monken's an interesting case too, because before he was with Georgia, he was the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay before Tom Brady was there. And then he was with Cleveland when Freddie Kitchens was there for a season. Completely different offenses, because in Tampa Bay he had Jameis Winston, and they were slinging the rock. I think they're
Jameis,
in the top half of the league with their passing attempts. And then you go to Cleveland, who just wants to pound the rock. But like you said, in Georgia, they're notorious for, we're going to be a run first team, and then we're going to do a bunch of play action type of things, which fits Lamar Jackson perfectly. So it'll be interesting to see this offense kind of develop in the NFL level.
Yes, for sure. Other news, we have Yeti. Carson Wentz. He's been released.
Fuck.
The Ginger has been released. He is now a free agent. We're going to talk about quarterbacks. I am of the, but we'll just have this conversation now because I really didn't include him in a whole lot of the meat and potatoes part of the episode. What are your thoughts on Carson Wentz? Do you think it's time for him to be a backup? Like that's where his career is at this point?
Yeah, man. I think his starting days are done. The only way he's ever going to start again is if somebody gets hurt.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's done, man. Unfortunately, the back injuries that he suffered, and I believe the ankle injury he suffered with Philadelphia, they really just, I think, fucked with him, and he fell apart very quickly, and he forgot how to play football, as we kind of saw in a stint with Washington last season. So,
experiment didn't work.
Super Bowl winning quarterback, but
he did it.
Well, Nick Foles did, but
he got a ring. He's
still got a ring.
Playoff Lenny has also been released. I don't find this to be that big of a shock. And for those that are playing our dynasty football and or looking towards the future here, this offseason is going to be incredibly interesting because there's also, and I'm sure we'll do an episode sooner rather than later about the running back migration that we're going to see, because there is a lot of big name free agent running backs that are currently going to be looking for new teams. There are also a lot of potential running backs. You know, Bijan Robinson is a huge topic of conversation in fantasy football communities right now. We'll touch on that, not on this episode, but we will be talking about it very soon, because where does he go? Where would you want to see him go? Where is the best home for him? And so there's a lot of running back movement. There's also a lot of guys that are rookie guys who are coming up and could take that role. I am in the camp that I think Rachaad White will probably be the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into next season. They might sign kind of a veteran like RB2, but I see White as the main back in that backfield. We already kind of halfway through this last year, White was kind of already taking the role over from Playoff Lenny, and now Playoff Lenny's been cut. So that's my take on it. I don't know if you share that same mentality, Yeti, but that's kind of where I see things. The Bucs, they have a lot of issues, or they will be having a lot of issues this upcoming year. And I think White is probably one of those positions that they have. Okay, we have other holes we need to fill. We know what we have in him. Let's get this, and this checked off.
Yeah. You kind of hit it right on the head, man. Tampa Bay, they're going to have a lot of issues without Tom Brady, but I think Playoff Lenny is the first of many cuts to unfortunately hit that team. They're going to be losing a lot of pieces on defense, but as well on offense. There was just a report that came out today that their left tackle was probably going to get cut because he's owed a lot of money. So they're going to be rebuilding. Unfortunately, and this Tampa Bay team is going to look a lot different than it's looked the past two seasons. I think Tampa Bay would be wise to maybe go sign like a veteran backup running back for Rachaad White, and kind of let him do his thing. But I think they also might target somebody in the draft. And I brought this up in the Daddy Brains chat yesterday that we have, that Bijan might be a possibility. I mean, at this point, he's a possibility to any team, you know. But I don't know.
And that's the hard part, right? Because you know, I've pulled up like, okay, where do teams draft out? You know, and you start looking at their draft capital for the first round anyway, and you're like, okay, well, these people very obviously need a quarterback. These people are probably going to trade out of their picks, and then you start looking and you're like, who needs a running back? And it's kind of harder to sit there and figure out, because there's a lot of teams that already have running backs and they have their guys at the moment. So it is somewhat difficult. We'll talk about it later. I don't want to go down too far down that hole, but Playoff Lenny, I loved you. I hope you find a new home. I don't know how his career looks going forward, but I don't think it's going to be as pertinent as it has been the last couple years. I see him kind of maybe like Melvin Ingram in a way, where he just he's there every once in a while. He'll get the ball, but he's going to start fading, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Golladay, he was cut. Thank the good Lord above. Kenny G is no longer wearing a Giants uniform. I think all Giants fans everywhere are rejoicing and very happy at this news. You have to be. Kenny G did almost absolutely nothing for that team and sucked up so much money, like an astronomical amount of money. I don't have the number in front of me, but it was embarrassing for what he did not do for that team.
He had 43 catches and 1 touchdown in 2 seasons. In 2 seasons, man. Oh my gosh. Which leads me to my question: who's a bigger fraud? Is it Kenny
Are you gonna say
Galladay
Allen
or-
Robinson? Is that who are you gonna say?
I was gonna say Carson Wentz, but
Oh,
Allen Robinson is another good one.
yeah.
So the 3 of them. We'll do 3 of them.
The biggest fraud, it's got to be Kenny G.
Yeah.
At least the other 2 were on the field. Like
True.
Kenny G, that man walked in and is like, "Oh, I'm hurt, coach. I can't play. I'm gonna collect the bag for the next 2 years, but I can't play." So I think Kenny G's the biggest fraud. I don't love any of them, but Kenny G's got to be the biggest fraud.
Yeah, Matt Stafford got that dude paid when he was with Detroit.
Yes, he did. And now, like, what do you? I don't really see him. Does he get signed as like a vet, like a T.Y. Hilton-esque kind of thing? Like, what do you do here? Is he done? Career over? Nobody wants to touch him?
You see him on the field and the dude can barely move. I think me and you could probably move a little better than him at this point. But honestly, I mean, a team might take a chance on him for like the training camp. They might pick him up, and then
The Ravens.
I wouldn't. Right. Like the Ravens will probably sign him like they did fucking Deshaun Jackson.
Sammy Watkins.
And then they'll probably cut him 2 weeks later. Or watch him go to like the fucking Chiefs, and then he just this all-pro wide receiver all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, Kenny G, from I'm not a Giants fan. I am a Brian Dable fan, but I'm not a Giants fan. Giants fans everywhere are they're very glad you're gone. So good luck finding a new home. Last thing here, Ryan Tannehill. It was the new Titans GM, Ran Carthon, stated Ryan Tannehill is going to remain a Titan, and I think this is a good segue here. We'll delve into this. You know what? Let's just do it right now. Let's talk about the Titans right now, because they're not there. We're gonna edge onto our meat and potatoes section here, but the Titans are interesting. So we'll start with them. The Titans, they have Malik Willis, who was a rookie quarterback last year and ended up kind of playing a little bit. Ryan Tannehill, in my opinion, is not that good of a quarterback. And I think most Titans fans probably will agree with that. The Titans are going to go under what I believe to be a pretty substantial rebuild. You think Ryan Tannehill is their quarterback next year?
Well, they've kind of put themselves in an interesting position because they drafted Malik Willis pretty early last season, and they are persistent in Ryan Tannehill being their starter. I think I saw something. I was trying to look it up real quick. If they were to cut Tannehill, they would have lost like around $20 million. So I think it's more of a.
You mean like saved in cap space?
No, they would have. They would have had 20 mil in cap space or dead space still.
Okay.
So it's almost like, well, shit. You know, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Yeah. So it's probably better to have a vet on their team at this point, and I think Ryan Tannehill would be a solid backup still. You know, obviously I think we kind of saw Malik Willis, what he's capable of, but I don't know if he got a fair shake of things, just kind of getting thrown into the mix mid-season. You know, that's difficult for a rookie quarterback, let alone a quarterback who's on a rebuilding team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you went and got Treylon Burks, and he didn't play for a large majority of the year due to injury. Derrick Henry is, you know, he's getting older. We said this last year.
We said
this O-line's getting older, and he's still getting it done. But at some point, that gas tank has to go on E, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of why I would like to see Malik Willis start next year. And if I was a Titans fan, I think that's probably what you want, because he is a young. He's not a rookie this year, but for all intents and purposes, he is a rookie. Like because he didn't really get to play last year. Robert Woods was your wide receiver one for a lot of it. Like
who's gone. He got cut.
Who's now gone. He did get cut. But it was difficult. It was difficult to throw somebody in there with no weapons and say, hey, go get it done.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, welcome to the NFL halfway through the year. So I would like Malik Willis to start. We'll see if that happens. It sounds like Ryan Tannehill would be a good business decision to keep him on board, but perhaps it's time for him to sit in the back seat and let the rookie cook.
Yeah, and I was trying to pull up the quote today too, but at the combine, the Titans GM said something along the lines of, "It's cute to play the Golden State Warriors type of offense for September and October, meaning air ball and look cute." But he's like, come November, December, January, you need to be pounding the rock. You need to make things look. You need to ugly things up, and so he's just basically saying that we're going to continue to pound the rock a lot, which obviously makes sense with Derrick Henry, but it's like, for how much longer are you going to be able to realistically do that? And if you think this team can still win, I feel like they're putting themselves in a really difficult spot, because they should be trying to slow rebuild, but instead they're insistent on, okay, we're going to go out there and we're going to
stick with what we got.
Yeah.
And you know what? Credit to Coach Vrabel. I got a lot of respect for Coach Vrabel, because every year I'm like, the Titans are not going to do well. And they end up they have favorable seasons a lot of the time. And I'm like, God dang, they're doing it again. So I got a lot of respect for him as a coach and what they're able to do with what I would consider to be a lackluster offense in a lot of ways, aside from Derrick Henry, of course. All right, before we jump into the meat and potatoes, Yeti, I do want to talk about March Gladness for just one moment. So for those that do not know, we are once again hosting March Gladness. If you're unfamiliar, we did this last year. There was a lot of you guys who reached out and said, hey, you going to do that again this year? Of course we are, because we want to take care of all the brainiacs out there. So March Gladness, essentially, we're giving away free shit, Yeti. That is what we are doing. We are giving away free signed NFL jerseys each week for the rest of March, starting next week. So it's fairly easy to do. Starting March 6th, that week, we are going to be giving away a free signed NFL jersey. The following Monday, free. Capitalize the free, because it's free. It's 100% free. There are going to be different things you got to do, like, hey, retweet the tweet, so then you get entered to win. But it's going to be very, very easy for all these brainiacs to do. We want to give some free shit to the brainiacs who love football just as much as we do. So we got you some signed jerseys. Hope you like them. Keep your eyes peeled. What I would recommend doing, if you're not following us on Twitter, you're already making a mistake. So go do that. And then turn on the notifications so you know when the tweet comes out, so you can be one of the first to get in on the action. It's really easy. If you don't know how to do it, go to our profile. There's a picture of what looks like a bell. You click it. Then you're good to go. Then you know, and you will be in the know throughout the entire month of March. Get yourself signed up for March Gladness. Free signed NFL jerseys. Free. All right, Yeti. The quarterback migration saga. It's about to go underway. And I got a statistic for you, my friend. So this is pretty interesting. I was looking into this. I was bringing all the information to the table and kind of getting the juices going up my noggin upstairs. And I looked, Yeti, there is almost 38% of the league that is going to have to make some decisions at quarterback this offseason. 38%. That's over a third of the league. And I'm an idiot, and I know that math. Like it's pretty astounding when you really think about it. So that's why we're going to talk about the great quarterback migration, because free agency is slated to start here very soon. And there's quite a few free agent quarterbacks. Okay.
Yeah. I'm
not going to name all of them.
Sorry to interrupt real quick, but it's interesting to think the position that we're in now, because over the past 10, 15 years, the quarterback position has been in such a good spot with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger. Like, that's just five right there. Eli Manning, the list goes on and on. Yeah. Derek Carr. No, just kidding. But like the league was in such a good spot, and now we're starting to see these newer guys. They're going to have to start really creating their way in the NFL. And obviously Mahomes is well on his way to do that. But what about these other guys? And so it's interesting now that a third of the league essentially is restarting, if you will.
And I think we're going to see some of that, like throughout the next couple of years, until they really get quote unquote their guy for a lot of the teams. So obviously you've got like your Joey B, Josh Allen, your Patrick Mahomes. They're their team's guy. Kyler Murray, unfortunately, maybe not. We'll see. But there are some big name quarterbacks who are currently going to become free agents. So I'm going to name some of the top ones, and then we'll kind of start talking about team situations here. So the biggest one, very obviously, is Lamar Jackson. Next up, you've got Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold. You get to Baker Mayfield, Taylor Heineke, Andy Dalton, Mike White. So like these guys are like, they were starting this last year for teams, right? And now they're free agents. So let's start from the top. And when I say the top, Yeti, I have listed these teams by draft pick. So the teams, and we're not going to go through all 32 teams, but the teams that are looking for quarterbacks, I have listed them at the start of where their draft pick is. Okay. So we're going to kick it off from the top. I will note this. The Bears have the first overall pick. The Bears do not need a quarterback. We'll talk about some potential trade outs that we think could or could not happen for some other teams, but I do believe that a team is going to purchase the first overall pick from the Bears. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So let's go to the Texans, who have the second overall pick. In the true Texans fashion, they found a way to screw themselves out of the first overall pick. All they had to do was lose a game. They were losing it, and at the very last second, got a touchdown, won the game, and gave the Bears the first overall pick. So the Texans, they're not going to get the QB1 on the draft, but I am of the mentality that the Texans will be drafting a quarterback at the second overall pick. Very obviously, Davis Mills, hashtag Mills Mafia.
RIP.
RIP, man. It's over. They kind of had towards the end of the year, they benched him and brought in some backup quarterback's name that I cannot remember. And then they had
Driscoll.
I think Driscoll? It was, Jeff Driscoll, yes. And then it was like half Mills for like a quarter, and then Driscoll would come in, and it was back and forth. They didn't know what the hell they wanted to do. They don't have an identity at quarterback. They're going to draft a quarterback with the second overall pick.
Yes, and I will have to say, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, I feel like the Houston Texans offense is the worst spot to land for any of these rookies, because they don't really have any true weapons, and they don't have any pieces on the offensive line to keep them upright. So it's going to be obviously we know it's going to be a rebuild there, but I feel like it's going to be a lot longer than people are going to expect.
I feel like they've been going under a rebuild for quite a while now.
Since the massage saga.
Yes. It's very interesting. I don't know what quarterback's going to end up there, but I feel like, Will Levis is potentially one of those guys there. Whatever quarterback ends up there is going to not want to go there. Like, they're crossing their fingers that they don't go there, because you're absolutely right. They have Nico Collins, who I believe is a second year this year, was not nearly as electric. Third year. So I believe his rookie contract will be coming to a close here, up and coming. They signed John Mechie last year, or drafted John Mechie last year, who he had cancer. So he did not play this year. And it sounds like he's recovering wonderfully, which is great news, but he's still not on the field for this team. Their running back situation, I think they finally shored up with Dameon Pierce. But beyond that, like, this team it needs a lot of work. Brandon Cooks wants out, who is their only reputable wide receiver at this point. He doesn't want to be there anymore. He wants to go win a ring. And Brandon Cooks he wasn't great this year, but previous to that has been pretty dominant when he is on the field. So Texans are going to be drafting a quarterback. I don't see them taking any quarterbacks in free. They might take a vet, like a vet in free agency, to just put on the bench, but I think this is going to be a rookie show. And for fantasy purposes, I'm very concerned. So not a great situation.
Yeah. And I think a better offense to land in is this next spot that you're about to talk about. Yeah.
The Colts. I would be much happier in for those that are playing dynasty football. Obviously, you have a draft for rookies. The Colts have the fourth overall pick. Potentially, they trade up. So let's the third overall pick goes to the Cardinals, who very obviously do not need a quarterback. The Cardinals could also trade out of their pick, and I think that would be a good idea for them, because somebody would be willing to buy that. So it's going to be interesting. Do the Colts go for number one, or do they get left with the sloppy seconds of whatever quarterback is left over? Because there's 3 or 4 good quarterbacks that are really going to be eyed at in this draft. So the Colts, very obviously, Matt Ryan did not work out for them, as many, including myself. I will raise my hand and
me too.
And I will say I was excited for Matt Ryan to go there. I said that they needed a game script manager. That is what they needed. They don't need anybody to be spectacular. They just need somebody to feed John Taylor the ball and throw the ball a little bit. And I figured Matt Ryan was going to be that guy. Turns out he wasn't. He wasn't that guy. So that experiment is over. It failed. Jeff Saturday was hired as interim coach after Frank Reich was fired halfway through the season. Matt Ryan was then benched when Jeff Saturday got in there for Sam Ellinger. We could keep going on here, Yeti, about all the problems that the Colts offense had seen this last year, but Ellinger really did not look like the answer. I don't think the Colts are going to say he is the answer, and I think the Colts are going to go look for a quarterback. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think that quarterback, whatever quarterback goes to the Colts, I'm pretty excited for. And the reason being is, well, there's a couple of reasons. First and foremost, you have John Taylor on that team, right? So you have an established runner who is a very good running back. You have Michael Pittman. You have Alec Pierce. You have these guys who are pretty good freaking players. Now, on top of this, Shane Steichen, the mouth breather, the new head coach for the Colts, he was the Eagles' offensive coordinator. So there begins an argument here. Was it Nick Sirianni or was it Shane? Or maybe it was a mix of both. And if Shane can take what the Eagles have done as an organization, and if they hire a Jalen Hurts-esque mobile quarterback, this offense gets to be pretty fun, pretty fast, in my opinion.
That's exactly what I was kind of thinking too, is he's probably going to try to look for a guy that's similar to Jalen Hurts. Like, obviously Jalen Hurts, he's developed and he's kind of in his own lane right now. But if you look at a guy who has potential to be like Jalen Hurts, you're looking at a guy like Will Levis or even Anthony Richardson. Those are two of the four top quarterbacks that are kind of regarded as the mobile quarterbacks, and they have a little more speed under them, whereas Bryce Young and God, what's the other one's name? Other guy's name is slipping my mind. It'll come up soon. But I think any of those quarterbacks, Levis, God, and Anthony Richardson,
Will Levis,
but
I don't know.
Levis, whatever it is. I think either one of those guys would be a great fit because they're going into a run first type of offense, which is great news for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it'll give him an opportunity to kind of learn and figure out the system and figure out the NFL a little bit more. So I agree with you there. And the Colts, I'm much more excited for whatever quarterback goes there than the Texans, just for their situation. This is where things get interesting, Yeti. The Raiders. Your team. So the Raiders have the 7th overall pick, and we're skipping ahead a little bit, and we're going to continue to skip ahead because we're focused on teams that need quarterbacks, right? So we went from the Colts, who had the 4th, to the Raiders, who have the 7th. You've got the Seahawks and Lions in between there. And the Seahawks, we could talk about them. Geno's going to be with the Seahawks. Like, that's I have that feeling. I don't know if you share that same sentiment. Do you think that the Seahawks are going to draft a quarterback with their 1st overall pick?
No.
Okay, I don't either. I think that Geno is going to be their guy. He's proved it. He's earned it. And he looked pretty damn good this year. So I think that they're going to stick with him. So we don't need to go too in depth here. But the Raiders become very, very interesting to me because Derek Carr, as we mentioned just a little bit ago, he has left the garage and he's not coming back. Okay. Raiders coach Josh McDaniels said that he is not looking for a 1-year fix-it quarterback, which makes this it makes it even more interesting, right? Because if he's not looking for a 1-year fix-it quarterback, he's looking for a quarterback that will be with the Raiders for quite a while. Okay, makes sense. So
what about a 2-year fix?
See, and that's where I'm like, man, does this happen? Because there's a lot of speculation there. Aaron Rodgers comes back and plays with Devontae Adams in Vegas. That is kind of that's the narrative that is getting spun in the media right now. And I don't see it happening, Yeti. I just don't see Aaron Rodgers going to the Raiders. I don't see that happening. I think the Raiders, and you're a Raiders fan, so you tell me, like, your team is on the precipice of a rebuild.
Yes.
And do you try and inject cocaine into your veins and make one more run for it, or do you rip the Band-Aid off and start now? Like, where are you at with this whole thing?
See, there's two two sides of the puzzle for me. One side is like, I want Aaron Rodgers because I would love to see the drama unfold between Aaron Rodgers and Josh McDaniels, and hopefully Josh McDaniels gets fired. That way we don't spend a lot of capital on a future quarterback that's just going to go to the shitter if Josh McDaniels can't develop him and if he's gone after a year, because that puts a lot of pressure on a rookie quarterback.
Do you think that Josh McDaniels is capable of that, of coaching a quarterback to greatness?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
If you look at his history, Tom Brady was his history. Basically, you know, everybody else is kind of he's a fraud at court or at head coach. So I just want Josh McDaniels fired. Anywho, that's one side. The other side is I could see them getting Jimmy G and then drafting a quarterback as well. And I feel like Jimmy G would be a better kind of a cultural quarterback, if you will. Not that I know the guy personally, but you know, from all the stories that we've heard about Aaron Rodgers being a dick to rookies and to just other players, basically, you know, especially with Jordan Love in Green Bay. I feel like Jimmy G would be more embracing of a rookie quarterback. But then again, I'm not dumb. I know the Raiders have a lot more issues than quarterback. So I would like them to kind of focus elsewhere in the draft and just solve the quarterback position with like Jimmy G or somebody, a vet who's not going to cost as much, because this is, like you said, it's going to be a painful, slow rebuild for the Raiders. And I don't think they're in a win now mode, or they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I don't think that they are either. But there's a potential, depending upon how things spin, like, you think the Raiders could draft a quarterback at the 7th overall pick?
Yes.
Like, is that a possibility? Because they're kind of in that window where it's like, okay, you know that, what is it, 4 out of the 7 teams currently, unless other people trade up and purchase those positions, 4 out of those 7 teams don't need quarterbacks. So like, there is a chance that there's a quarterback sitting there at the 7th round that the Raiders like. So in your mind, do they have their guy? And if their guy falls to them, it's a full rebuild. And if it doesn't, then, you know, their guy doesn't, then they make a pivot. Like, is that where they're at as a franchise? Is like that 7th overall pick is really determined upon how things fall? Like, what do you think?
I think so. I think, you know, if they really have their guy, they might try to trade up for him, but I haven't seen really any reports that indicate that they've, you know, fallen in love with any prospect. I kind of think that Josh McDaniels coming out and saying they're not looking for a 1-year fix is kind of like it's kind of like coach speak at this point, because we don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Packer. You know, all the speculation is that he's not, yada, yada, yada. But I feel like, Davante Adams, he's very involved with the quarterback search. That's what Josh McDaniels has also said. So I feel like anybody and everybody knows that Davante Adams probably wants to play with Aaron Rodgers again. So they're probably just dragging their feet waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And with that being said, I could see them potentially trading back if they do get Aaron Rodgers. While I don't think that's smart, I could see that happening because this front office is, like I've said earlier, it's very mediocre. We have a shitty front office, so I've learned to expect the worst with the Raiders.
Well, you're not the only one who's struggling. The Atlanta Falcons with the 8th overall pick are also struggling, Yeti. So I want to let you know you're not alone for those that are Falcons fans. Marcus Mariota did the Falcons no service this year. He really didn't. And there was some optimism. I was kind of like, man, this will be interesting, because when Mariota filled in with the Raiders, you know, when Derek Carr got hurt, not last year, but the year previously, Marcus Mariota had to come in. And I was actually pretty impressed with what I saw in that short amount of game time that he was playing. And I was like, man, he might still have it. So much so that the Falcons brought him in on a 1-year deal. He wasn't it, Eddie. He wasn't it. And now the Falcons, they have their 3rd round quarterback from last year, Desmond Ridder. So the Falcons GM, Terry Fontenot, says that they like the progress they've seen from Ridder, but they're going to add at the position. Says that they could draft a free agent or both. So they could either draft a quarterback or get a free agent quarterback, but they won't rule out using the 8th overall pick on a quarterback. So This is a huge topic of conversation in both NFL communities and fantasy football communities, and it's one that is there's a lot of opinions. I have mine. I believe that the Falcons, Lamar Jackson is somebody that is a huge topic of conversation. A lot of people want Lamar Jackson to go to the Falcons. That is what they want. For offensive production, I would love that. I would love Lamar Jackson to go to the Falcons. I don't think it happens. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be in a Ravens uniform this next year. I think they're going to come to a deal. Okay. I have stated before, and we'll touch on this when we get to the Ravens, but I am not too keen on Lamar Jackson at this point in time. Granted, he is the best free agent. He is arguably the best free agent quarterback. Maybe Daniel Jones if you want to, but he is the fastest guy in the NFL. But I think it's got to be Ritter. I think Ritter is going to be their quarterback next year. I think they should give him a chance. You drafted this quarterback in the 3rd round, so the draft capital is nothing extreme, but you drafted him for a reason. You didn't give him the opportunity to play. You did him a disservice last year is what you did, because you let Marcus Mariota play over on a 1-year deal, knowing full and well. I mean, for a little bit, maybe they were competing for a playoff berth just because how bad their division was. Let the rookie go in and play and see what you have in this guy. And you didn't give him that opportunity. And now you're kind of sitting here wondering, do we have enough to build off of? Did we see the flashes that we needed to see to be comfortable taking him into year 2? So here's what I think. I think that the Falcons are going to pick up a quarterback in free agency. I don't think they're going to pick up a quarterback in the draft. And I think it would be pretty silly for them to pick up a quarterback in the draft. I think they're going to pick one up in free agency, and then we'll kind of see what happens. Okay. That's my thought. I don't know. Where do you land with the Falcons?
My ultimate hope for Atlanta this offseason is that they do land Lamar Jackson, because that offense would be fun as fuck. But I am also kind of in the same ballpark as you are, saying that Lamar Jackson is going to go back to the Ravens. I think he has all the leverage in the world with Baltimore, and I think that is where he ultimately should stay. So with that being said, now that we know that Lamar is potentially off the table there, they have the 8th pick. And at this point, they might be outside looking in on the quarterbacks, the top 4 quarterbacks, because as we just alluded to, the Raiders, the Colts, the Texans, the next team we're going to talk about, they all might move up in front of them and take a quarterback. And I feel like at that point, it's like, well, fuck, okay, I guess we're just going to get the best player available on our draft board. And they don't have to put all their eggs in the basket this year, because there's more quarterbacks coming in next year. Like, there's 2 elite quarterbacks in next year draft, which we'll talk about later, but like, they have other opportunities to get quarterbacks, and it's not just this year. So I agree with you. They might look to get a veteran. I kind of like Jacoby Brissett going there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That was exactly what I was going to say. I love Jacoby Brissett, and I really want the Cardinals to pick up Jacoby Brissett on a 1-year deal, because Kyler Murray's probably not going to be back to start the season. But Jacoby Brissett looked really freaking good this last year with the Browns, and so I am so glad you said that, because I was about to cue that up and tee it off. And I was going to say, I think Jacoby Brissett could be a really good candidate for the Falcons. And maybe it's an off-season battle to see who wins that spot. But I think Jacoby Brissett, if he plays like he did when he was with the Browns, man, like, he could do it. And realistically, you feel bad for Kyle Pitts owners and Drake London owners, because this team did them a disservice this year for fantasy purposes and really for NFL purposes on the field, because Marcus Mariota wasn't getting it done. Yep. I watched that man turtle shell onto his back and chuck the ball straight up in the air. And I said, this is the best product that you have for us right now. I want to see this rookie play. At that moment, it was over. It should have been over a long time ago. But like this, at that moment, I was blown away. I like Jacoby Brissett. To the Falcons. I think that would be it would still be an upgrade for this offense, and hopefully breathe some life into those that have been Kyle Pitts believers for so long.
Yeah. And this offense honestly shouldn't be as bad as they were last year, because if you look at the pieces that they have, this could be, a sneaky good offense next year, because yes, they have Kyle Pitts, they have Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson, he's getting older, but he's still valuable in some regards. And Drake London. Oh, and they also had a top 5 offensive line according to PFF. So they have pieces in place to make a decent run on offense. Now they just need somebody who's capable on offense. So I'm hopeful that this offense is going to shift from a Marcus Mariota triple option type of look to an actual NFL offense with a full offseason for Desmond Ridder.
100%. This next team is Yeti, I'm struggling. I am struggling here. This is the Carolina Panthers at the 9th overall pick. I have zero ideas what the Panthers do here. I have no fucking clue because they don't have a quarterback. They took Sam Darnold off of the Jets' hands a few years ago, who, by the way, is now a free agent. And then they found out they didn't like Sam Darnold. So what do? They said, let's go get Baker Mayfield from the Browns. That was horrible. I watched that in person, and it was awful. It was terrible. So then, Baker Mayfield wasn't it. The Rams picked up Baker Mayfield halfway through the year because the Panthers said, get the hell out of here. They don't have a quarterback. It was a disaster last year. They do not have a quarterback. They have the 9th overall pick. Do they try and make a shoot for a quarterback this year? Do they try and buy up, so to speak, in the draft to try and get a top-tier quarterback? What do you think?
I think they have to. I think this is one of the teams that I could see trading with the Cardinals or even the Bears to get up in the top 3 spots to draft a quarterback because, like you mentioned, they have nobody on that offense right now to lead. And they do have a new coaching staff there in Carolina as well. So I'm eager to see what they're going to do. They're going to want to get their guy in there early and, get him established, get him going. But there's a lot of issues in Carolina, man. It's not just a quarterback position. They have DJ Moore, and that's about it.
That's it. That's it. They got
so
DJ Moore.
It's not going to be a great situation for a rookie to run into, but they need somebody, and maybe they get somebody with a lot of potential like Anthony Richardson, who would be he kind of reminds me of a Cam Newton, which would be a great fit for Carolina. Now I'm just curious to see what kind of offense they're going to be running there in Carolina.
That is really the question at hand. Carolina, by the end of the year, they were a little frisky, I will say. I expected nothing from them, and their defense kind of stepped it up towards the end of the year. I'm curious to see how that translates into this year, especially under new coaching staff. Their running back situation isn't great. I think Chuba Hubbard is currently the RB1. I believe Foreman is a free agent. So, there's a lot of questions at hand. If they don't trade up, there is no question in my mind that they will be signing a free agent quarterback. Jimmy G is somebody that I think of here. I don't see it being Aaron Rodgers. Not that he is a free agent by any stretch of the means, but Jacoby Brissett, maybe. It doesn't excite me for fantasy, but
I blanked on this because I forgot Carolina had got a head coach until we started talking about it, but their head coach is Frank Reich now. And that kind of leads me to wonder, I know we kind of wrote him off earlier, but Carson Wentz.
No, don't fucking do it, Yeti.
I mean, they need somebody, and Carson Wentz knows the offense already from his time in Philly and his time in Indy. Carson Wentz is going to be the week 1 starter for Carolina. I just spoke it into existence.
Son of a bitch. I hate you for that.
Oh, God. I'm sorry. But, yes.
I think they have to trade. I think that they have to freaking trade up. They have. And I think I would like to see them do that. I really would, because they need to really bad.
Or they're going to have Carson Wentz started.
Or they're going to have Carson Wentz. That's terrible. This next one, I'm very excited to talk about. It is the New York Jets, who have the 13th overall pick.
The best spot.
The best spot, Yeti. This is the one that dude. Jets are playoff bound, man. If they figure out a quarterback, the Jets are a really scary team. They had one of the best defenses last year, and they have so many weapons on offense. The problem this last year was you had somebody named Zach Wilson on the team, and Mike White and Joe Flacco. Now, Mike White and Joe Flacco are now currently free agents, meaning that the only rostered quarterback on this team is none other than the MILF Hunter himself, Zach Wilson. Yeah,
And he's still trying to figure out what's bigger than 3 inches.
it's bad. Like Zach Wilson is done. I think Zach Wilson, his career ended in that press conference room. Like that is what happened, and as it should, because Zach Wilson proved to be a bust, I think. So the Jets have stated that they are willing to spend big money on a quarterback this offseason. Yeti, I'm calling it right now. I've been thinking this for weeks. Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. I mean, what other quarterback? The Packers have stated that, or they've kind of hinted at the fact that they're okay with selling Rodgers, right? I don't think Rodgers is a Packer next year. Do you think that? I mean, like, is there a pretty good chance in your mind that Aaron Rodgers is a Packer next year?
No, Aaron Rodgers won't be a Packer by the end of the offseason, but I do think Derek Carr is going to be a Jet.
I hope not.
That's what's going to happen, unfortunately.
I hope he doesn't. I hope it's Rodgers.
I'm trying to pull up a quote, but I read something on Twitter from I believe it was a New York Jets GM, had stated that they feel like Derek Carr could be a Hall of Famer if he went to the Jets, and that they could win Super Bowls. It's like, what the fuck?
What
are
drugs
you smoking,
they slipped him?
man?
Yeah, like I have no fucking clue. Like, look,
honestly,
here's the thing. Derek Carr is not the worst free agent in the free agent quarterback class that we have this year. I will say that. I look at Derek Carr very similar to Jimmy G. That is, I put them neck and neck as far as I'm like, okay, if I needed a quarterback, which one would I rather have? They're pretty much paddling in the same boat because neither of them are that great. So I really don't want to see him go to the Jets. For those that own every piece of this Jets offense, I am praying to the good Lord above that Aaron Rodgers ends up there, because that would be the best case scenario for both the Jets as well as anybody for fantasy purposes that owns any of these players.
But to be fair, I know Derek Carr gets a bad rep, and I've said he's a pussy on this podcast before, but he can still support fantasy weapons, like I'm thinking of guys like Amari Cooper. Obviously, Devontae Adams still had a great year, but I mean, he's an elite wide receiver. But like Michael Crabtree, Amari Cooper, Darren Waller, he's had a serviceable wide receiver one every year that he was a starting quarterback. And now that he has somebody like Garrett Wilson, I think could really thrive with a quarterback like Derek Carr. I mean, you saw what he did with Mike White. Like the numbers that he put up with Mike White were pretty good, and not a knock on Mike White, but I feel like Derek Carr is a little bit of a better quarterback, and he's a little bit more seasoned than Mike White at this point. So I don't think Derek Carr would be the worst thing to happen for the Jets. And
I don't think he'd be the best thing to happen.
And I don't think Aaron Rodgers would be the best thing either. I mean, if we look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers last year, he was not very efficient at all. And I know you could say the same thing for Derek Carr, but Derek Carr is also younger. He's a better fit in that locker room for what they're trying to build in New York, because they have so many young guys. They have rookies. They have sophomore guys that are young and huge parts of their offense and their defense. So I think Derek Carr would really be that captain that they're lacking at that point, whereas Aaron Rodgers would be kind of a fuck you type of guy in the locker room.
I see that argument. I understand. I see that argument, and we've talked off screen about that before, as far as Aaron Rodgers and his the way he carries himself with the other players who were younger, and there was a lot of conversation about that locker room with the Packers. So I understand where you come from, and I think it's a valid argument. I don't think Derek Carr looks good in green, and that's a problem for me. Like like color wise, I don't think he looks good in green. And that's I try and envision him in the Jets uniform, and it's very difficult for me. I understand your argument, and I really do. I think there's a lot of merit to it. I don't know why, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm just gonna say it. I could see Derek Carr going to the Commanders. That's kind of, and that was in my head where I had thought, and I don't know why. I don't have any secret analysis to back that up. I just had a feeling that Derek Carr was going to go to the Commanders.
I don't hate that.
I don't hate it either, especially with Bieniemy there and the potential of what he could do. We'll touch on the Commanders in a moment. I don't want to jump too far ahead here because we have the Green Bay Packers at the 15th overall pick. We talked about Aaron Rodgers just a moment ago, so let's talk about him in full right here. So Aaron Rodgers, he loves the limelight. And he does this what seems like every year now, where he wants to grab media attention. He wants to be the guy that everybody talks about. He wants everyone to talk about him coming out of his cave retreat on his ayahuasca and whatever else went on in there. You stated that Aaron Rodgers is not. You don't believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be wearing a Packers uniform next year. I agree with that. I think. And I am of the belief that Jordan Love will be the quarterback for the Packers next year. Mm-hmm. He will be playing for them. The Packers are kind of notorious for this in a way where who was the guy before Aaron Rodgers, Yeti?
Oh, Mr. Dick Pick, Brett Favre.
Yes, sir. And Aaron Rodgers, didn't he sit on the bench for a little bit before Big Dick Favre retired? So they're notorious for this. I think Jordan Love is going to be their quarterback this year. I really do firmly believe that. And I think Packers fans are coming around to the idea. I think, in the Packers circles that I have delved into, yeah, I know it's not a good place, but I've been there and they seem to be like, okay, they're like, okay, yeah, like let Rodgers go. Let's start the new era. Let's get Love in here. So I'm of the belief that happens. And it sounds like you kind of agree with that. The Love will be there.
Yeah.
Their QB1.
It kind of sounds like Packers fans and the Packers front office are kind of over Aaron Rodgers' shenanigans with all that he's done over the past 2 years. I think the general manager and the head coach, I can't think of his name, LaFleur. I feel like they've probably gotten dragged by the dick by Aaron Rodgers the past 2 seasons by all the actions that he's done and with all of his whining and everything that he does, that they're probably just over it. And I've seen reports from the general manager that he's been in contact with Jordan Love's agent, telling him what their plans are basically, and to basically get Jordan Love ready to play because he's going to be the starter. Basically. And I think it comes down to Aaron Rodgers basically just stating his intentions to the Packers to get that finally going.
Well, and I'm curious here, like, do you think that at the very least, Aaron Rodgers is informing the Packers of like his mentality of like, because all the media asks Aaron Rodgers, are you going to play this year? Are you going to retire this year? Do you think you're going to go somewhere else this year? And he's just very like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Like there has to be conversations going on with the Packers because like everything is wrapped around Aaron Rodgers as far as the Packers' future is concerned. So like they're having conversations, right? Like the Packers are well aware of kind of the next move for Aaron Rodgers, whether it is retirement or whether he goes somewhere else. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, and I mean they can't really cut him. So the only thing that they can do is trade him. But I feel like Aaron Rodgers would have all the leverage in the world if that were to happen because he's owed $59 million this year. $59 million, but he also has a no trade clause in his contract. So he can dictate
where he goes,
how everything works. So whoever picks him up is going to have to be paying a hefty
I wonder, like, are we going to start seeing no more of these no trade clauses in contracts? Like, because it's starting to fuck teams over quite a bit. I wonder, like, down the road if we'll see those become more of a rarity. Okay, so the Commanders. We talked about it just a minute ago. The Commanders, they tried the Carson Wentz experiment, and they failed. They don't have the draft capital to look towards the future with a new quarterback. Taylor Heineke is currently a free agent and somebody that the Commanders fans, the fan base, they kind of want him to come back. And they kind of, from the murmurs I am seeing and hearing, they want Heineke to come back. So do you think they roll with a free agent quarterback in Heineke? The Commanders head coach, Ron Rivera, said that Sam Howell's not their starter at quarterback, which I think was apparent after what we kind of saw last year. Very obviously he's going to begin the year at quarterback 1 because they don't really have any other quarterbacks at the moment. But it says that, the Washington Commanders, they plan to bring a veteran quarterback to compete with Howell. I just have a feeling it's Derek Carr, as I mentioned earlier. I don't have anything to back that up. but I could see that being the case. I don't know if it's a little tickle I have in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I don't really hate that Derek Carr to Washington. I just I wanted to look up to see how much cap space they had to see if they could realistically afford him. And they have $16 million to play with. And unfortunately, I think Derek Carr, he's still going to be looking at that 30 to 35 mil a year type of range. That's a number I keep on seeing on Twitter. I
We need
don't
to bring
agree
that
with
down.
it, but huh?
We need to bring that number down.
Oh, for sure. But I don't think they'll be able to afford him. So then you start going into the conversation of, okay, then who? Well, like you said, Taylor Heineke, he's a free agent as well, so they'll have to bring him back. But Sam Howell, as of right now, is the only quarterback on the roster. So maybe you bring in an older guy like Andy,
or maybe
Dalton.
they clear some cap space too.
Yeah, they could certainly do that. Jameis is about to be cut by the Saints.
Oh, laser Jameis.
Jameis in Washington, that'd be fun.
That would be enemy as a coach. It would be that sounds like a train wreck that I would love to watch. Like that just sounds so much fun. We'll see what happens. The Commanders, they're not going to be able to draft a quarterback, plain and simple. Like that's just that they don't have the capital to do it. I don't see them being able to trade up unless they really sell a lot to do that. I would like them to, because I would like, but the only difference is Bieniemy would have to be a head coach. If Bieniemy was a head coach somewhere, I could see them wanting to quote unquote invest in their their head coach and get him the guy that he wants. You know what I mean? So, but with him being the offensive coordinator and Ron Rivera still being there, I just don't see that being the case. They're going to figure it out. They have some weapons there. They do, but none of it excites me given the names that we're throwing out. I still kind of look at them very similar, maybe depending upon who's there, a slight upgrade from last year, but you're really going to have to prove it to me before I'm buying in for fantasy purposes. All right, Yeti. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's say a quick prayer. Rest in peace, Tom Brady. He's gone.
R.I.P.
He did us all a great service in letting us watch him for the past most of our entire lives. But
years,
yeah, like 37 years. So the problem is Tom Brady's gone, Yeti. Do you know?
And he's not coming back.
He ain't coming back this time.
He's
gone
gone
for good. Do you know who the current quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are?
Tell me.
You ever heard a name called Kyle Trask?
Who the fuck? Is that like the local sheriff in town?
Yeah, pretty much. But this sheriff, his gun is not loaded, and he will not be throwing darts. If Kyle Trask is not that great, and he is currently the only quarterback on the Tampa Bay Bucks roster.
Great.
The Bucks are going to enter a pretty steady rebuild here. And their defense, as you mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of their defense is set for free agency. So this team is going to look very different next year. So with the 19th overall pick, they're going to be looking for a quarterback. Okay. It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. I don't believe Aaron Rodgers will go to the Bucks. I just don't see that happening. Aaron Rodgers, I think, I truly believe this. And here's kind of why I think Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, he wants to go somewhere and win. I do believe that. I think that although Aaron Rodgers, we could say a lot about him, I think he does want to win. And I think the Jets would give him a really good opportunity to do that, given the talent that they have. Very stout defense, good offensive young players, and there's some animosity there that you touched on. But the Bucks don't make sense. I think the Bucks are kind of they're gonna be going under a rebuild, and that's what they're gonna do. So I think they're gonna pick up a quarterback off free agency. They're not gonna want to spend a shit ton of money on a quarterback. Jacoby Brissett would be somebody that kind of comes to mind as well. Jimmy G is somebody that I got a tickle in could go to the Bucks. It seems like that would be a place because Jimmy, like as far as they still have Mike Evans. They still have Godwin. They might not just due to cap space and their age, and they might try and leverage them out of a trade or leverage them to get some assets down the road. So I could see that, but they still have some weapons. And I don't think they're not gonna want to spend big money on somebody like Rodgers. They're just not. So maybe Jimmy G, maybe somebody like Derek Carr. I hope to God it's not Carson Wentz. But one of those guys is
Jameis.
No,
it's a
Jameis,
natural fit. He's got to go back. He's got to fix. Yeah, he's got to fix his redemption arc.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like they're gonna bring in a vet, and I think it's gonna be a low price vet because looking at this roster as is, they're not gonna do anything, man. Like I know the NFC South was down bad this season, but if you look at the Bucs roster today versus how it looked, this time last year, looks a lot different. And that's because of Tom Brady, but also the amount of people that they're going to be losing on defense, the amount of starters they're losing on defense and on offense as well. Like I mentioned, their left tackle's gone, Lenny's gone. It's just going to be a big rebuild. So I think my main question, regarding this Buccaneers offense, and I know we're talking about quarterbacks, but are we going to start seeing these pieces, like we mentioned, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, get traded away so maybe they can draft a quarterback in either this year or in the future?
The Bears need wide receivers. Yeti.
Mike Evans is out there. Chris Godwin, he's coming off ACL surgery, but he's still, I think, 25, 26 years old. So he's got a few years on his tires still. I'm not saying they trade the 103 or 101 for Chris Godwin, but I don't know if Bucs can do anything else to entice him. But
that would be interesting. I mean, the Bucs, they don't have. It's gonna one or two things gonna happen. They're gonna trade up and try and get a quarterback because they desperately need one. Or they're going to go in with a free agent quarterback. They're probably not going to do well, and they're going to hope that they're going to go into full hard rebuild mode. But if you're going to go in with that mentality, you probably should sell the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting because you do have these talented wide receivers that are aging, but they're, as you said, there's still tread on them. So that's tough, man. That's so tough. Or even if they trade with the Cardinals, if they trade back and get the 3rd overall pick, they can still grab a quarterback there. And, the Cardinals, well, I mean, currently there's still Hopkins is still there. There's a lot of speculation that he'll get traded in this offseason. So that's tough, man. That's really tough. TBD on that because I hadn't really thought about the possibility of the Bucs trading up, but they're in a really precarious situation there. So I'm interested to see how they play this in the offseason. I still think they're going to grab it. I'm just going to say this just for the listeners. I think they're going to grab a free agent quarterback. I think that's probably the most likely scenario in my mind.
Yep.
So the Ravens, we talked about this a little bit just a moment ago here, but the Ravens are going to have to pay the Piper, a.k.a. Mr. Lamar Jackson, this year if they indeed want to make him their franchise quarterback. So they have stated that they are willing to do so. There have been multiple reports stating that the Ravens they're feeling good about contract negotiations and they want to get the deal done to get Lamar there. I think it's going to happen. You also think it's going to happen from what you've said earlier. If it doesn't happen, Lamar Jackson is going to be franchise tagged. There is no way that Lamar Jackson does not get franchise tagged. But what this does is basically this says, Lamar Jackson, you want to go and play for somebody like the Falcons? We want compensation for you. So that's why they're going to franchise tag him. So for those that don't understand the game that could be played, that is it. So they're going to franchise tag him and say, okay, we'll let you go, but we want a couple first round picks or this, and this in order for this to be for you to get Lamar Jackson. So that is a game that could be played. I am of the camp that he will play for the Ravens. And it sounds like you are too. I've talked about this earlier on previous episodes, Yeti, but Lamar Jackson, there is some concern there, right? Like Lamar Jackson over the last 2 years, he's missed over 27% of his games. That's over a quarter of his games he has not played due to injury. I mean, is that of a concern for you? Like, regardless of if he's with the Ravens or he's with the Falcons or whatever team he's on, like, is that a concern?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he's slowly becoming the Christian McCaffrey of the quarterback position, which is shitty to say because they're both super talented, but the teams need these guys on the field. And I think Lamar Jackson, he proved his worth by, you could say he, not faked his injury, but he drug out his injury. And you saw what happened when the Ravens were without him. They started Tyler Huntley, who, Pro Bowl quarterback. So congratulations. But he had more interceptions and passing touchdowns, and the offense for I believe it was 6 weeks that Tyler Huntley started at quarterback, that offense only averaged 13 points a game. 13 points. This offense is supposed to be one of the most explosive and fun offenses to watch, but instead they're over here looking like the Broncos. So they know they have to pay him. This offense is built for a guy like Lamar Jackson, and I think the smartest thing to do is pay him and then use your draft pick on a wide receiver, or go in free agency and go get Jacoby Myers, who happens to be the best free agent wide receiver this year. But go surround him with guys and make it appealing to stay in Baltimore instead of allowing him to open up these doors for conversations to go to Atlanta, because he has a pretty good situation in Baltimore if they decide to pay him, and they would be stupid not to.
Bingo. I could not agree with you more. I was going to, I had the question on the tip of my tongue. Did the departure of Hollywood Brown affect this team whatsoever? Knowing full and well that, and you're nodding your head yes, and I couldn't agree with you more. Like that, you got rid of a weapon that he looked to a lot when Hollywood was on. Bateman was supposed to be the wide receiver one. That was what everybody teed him up to be. Go get Rashad Bateman. He's going to be the guy, and he wasn't.
Yep.
He wasn't on the field. He was injured. You got Mark Andrews, who of course is the wide receiver one in this offense. He had some injury this last year as well. This team had a lot of injury across the board. They need a wide receiver. I will state that Lamar Jackson, as I have stated before, I don't know how strong his arm is. And that is of a slight concern. He's not your prototypical pocket passer as far as his arm strength. I think that's most people can agree with me there. But that is the only qualm that I have aside from him being on the field. That's the biggest one for me. If he can't stay healthy, why pay the guy?
And I think part of the issue with Lamar Jackson is, I believe Greg Roman was our offensive coordinator beforehand, but they didn't know what they wanted to do with Lamar Jackson. They didn't know whether they wanted him to be like this run first type quarterback, or they want him to be a pocket quarterback. I feel like his game script changes every fucking game. And I feel like as a person, I would be frustrated by that. But as a football player, I'd be even more frustrated. Let me use my biggest weapon, get me on the run. Let me get these easy throws out. If I need to tuck it and run it, I'll tuck it and run it. But I think by Todd Monken coming in, that should ease his mind a little bit as to what they can do on offense. Maybe they build the offense a little better around him, getting more weapons, but they also structure it a little bit differently. Todd Monken, he made a walk-on quarterback look elite for a college quarterback in Stetson Bennett for the past 3 years. So if he can do that with a walk-on, imagine what he can do with the Heisman winner and Lamar Jackson, who happens to be the same age as Stetson Bennett, who's getting drafted this year. But anyway, so yeah, spin zone, baby.
They brought him in as OC so they can get Bennett as their quarterback.
Oh, fuck.
I'm just kidding. I don't think that's actually going to happen, but I do think that the Ravens will stick with Lamar Jackson. But what if they're like, hey, we're going to get your coach. You come over here. You play for us. No, I don't think it will happen.
They can get him in the 7th round.
They could. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he's going to play. And they should. They should, they have the 22nd overall pick. They should get a wide receiver. They need to get a wide receiver. They need to help Lamar Jackson and get him a really good weapon to replace Hollywood Brown. Mm-hmm. That's what they need to do. So I really want to see that happen. We're going to wrap this up with the last team we have here, Yeti. We talked about it just a little bit ago. Jameis Winston is no longer going to be with the New Orleans Saints. So talk about a really screwed team here, because they have a very unfavorable situation for their cap space. They have dwindling talent in some areas. They have some optimism in a little bit of areas. As far as you got Chris Olave there, young wide receiver, but Michael Thomas has not lived up to his return like many had thought that he would. Alvin Kamara has some legal charges that he may or may not play next year. So yeah, this team is in a little bit of a rough patch, right? And then they don't have a lot of money to pay anybody. So they had Andy Dalton / Taysom Hill this last year. They didn't know who they wanted to play at quarterback. Jameis Winston ended up getting benched. Andy Dalton is now a free agent. Jameis Winston's a free agent. They can't really afford to pay like a big name quarterback kind of guy, I don't think. And they have a really late round pick, so they're not going to get a quarterback here. Like it's got to be hard to be a Saints fan right now.
Do you want to know how fucked they are right now?
Yes, please.
They are negative $30.8 million in the cap space right now. So they just cut Jameis Winston, so that'll alleviate about $11 million. But they're paying guys like Michael Thomas and Taysom Hill. Oh my God, this is disgusting. Michael Thomas is due $26 million this year. Taysom Hill is due $23 million.
Oh my God.
That's fucking insane.
You can't make that shit up. Dude, okay. So here's the thing.
Sean Payton is a fuck, man.
Sean
he really
Payton,
fucked this whole organization.
That is what I was going to say. Sean Payton saw the writing on the fucking wall, and he was like, dude, we're in cap space purgatory. We're about to get fucked. I need to get out of here. I'm going to retire. Good luck, everybody. Got the fuck out. And now he's with the Broncos. I'm glad I didn't get Sean Payton. Okay, but here's the thing. Was it the GM or was it Sean Payton or was it a combination?
He was a GM.
He was GM and coach?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So Sean Payton single-handedly fucked that team. Saw the writing on the wall.
He has the same power with the Broncos, so I'm hoping he does this with the Broncos too, because fuck Denver. But
that's why I didn't want him as a coach. I was like, dude, like he fucked this team up. And everybody's like, he's a great coach. He's a great coach. Well, yeah, I'm not going to say he's not a good coach, but also he had Drew Brees as his quarterback for the majority of it. So it's like, was he a good coach? And we're about to see, was he that good of a coach, or was it because he had a Hall of Fame quarterback that he helped support?
But in the process, he also fucked this team for the next, 5-6 years after his 100%. Departure.
Yeah. So kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. I don't know what Yeti. I don't even have a clue. I don't think they fucking have a clue what they're going to do at quarterback this year, because they can't.
They seriously can't afford anybody. So, I've read reports that say the Saints want to make a deal with Derek Carr, but how are they going to do that? Are they going to cut Taysom Hill? What are they going to do?
They're gonna. They
can't even afford to sign their rookies that they're bringing in this year.
No, they're going to have to make some serious cuts. Tyrann Mathieu, I don't know what he gets paid. And their defense is pretty stout usually. Over the last couple of years, they've had a pretty stout defense. They have Tyrann Mathieu, who I'm sure they're paying quite a bit.
$14.6 million. Marshawn Lattimore, their top cornerback, who missed basically all of last season, he's owed $43 million.
You cut him.
Starting center is due $43 million.
Holy shit.
They're paying these guys
way too much money.
Way too much, yes.
And they're happy, and I'm happy that they got the bag at the expense of the team. But yeah, they're gonna have to either trade away some people and have in the trade that they take a lot of that cap, so it's not dead cap. They're gonna have to cut people. Otherwise they're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they already have to cut $30 million just to play,
just to sign their rookies.
Yeah, that's where
in
they're
April.
At. That is
they're
such a
fucked.
Bad spot. Yeah, they're gonna have to figure something out. It's gonna be fun to watch because as a fan of chaos, I can't wait for this to ensue. But it's bad. It's bad. And
if they don't get Carr, they're gonna be looking at another season of Andy Dalton, basically, or an XFL star, because they can't afford anybody.
Yeah, pretty much. Like AJ McCarron, hey, come play. Yeah, it's a bad situation. So. That's kind of the quarterback outlook, and a lot's going to happen in the next month. We'll see what we hit on and what we don't, Yeti, and maybe Rodgers will end up as a Packer. Maybe he'll end up as a Raider. Maybe he'll retire. Who knows? He'll go do ayahuasca in a cave. But I am
Jeopardy
excited.
Host.
Yeah, he wants it. He wants to do it. He said he has. That would be interesting. And I think he would retire if they offered him that job. I do believe that. But I'm done talking about Aaron Rodgers because I'm tired of giving him the limelight. The last thing I'm going to say before we get the hell out of here, appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate your continued support. March Gladness starts next week. You are not going to want to miss this. We are giving away some free jerseys that are awesome. Great jerseys. Week 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're giving away 4 free.
Free.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, free. With free signed NFL jerseys. So make sure to be following us on Twitter. Like I said earlier, if you're not, you're making a poor choice. So go do that. And then turn on our notifications.
They're not signed by me. They're not signed by Andy Dalton. They're signed by, premium guys.
Yeah, yes. Some good players that are currently playing in the league. And it might be on your fantasy rosters next season. I'm assuming actually all these people will. So go make sure that you turn on those notifications and be following us. Yeti, am I missing anything, buddy?
No, man. Good to be back.
It's good to be back, man. I'm glad you joined us today. And I'm glad that we're able to do this. So it's vacation was good. Did you do anything on vacation?
We're busy behind the scenes here at Leather Brains. I'll just say that.
All right. That's a good teaser. We do have some big stuff coming for you guys. So we're excited. There's going to be some announcements down the road. We'll say that. So appreciate you guys' continued support. We love you guys, and we
are
out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leather Brains. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app and YouTube, as well as following us at Leather Brains on Twitter and Instagram. If you're looking for specific fantasy advice, including draft advice, trade insight, starts and sits, or even if you want our thoughts on your sports bets, please feel free to send us a DM on Twitter for an answer and a chance to have your question featured on a future episode. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back before you know it.